I am a 25-year-old man, the youngest of 4 siblings born to my mom, who is 52, and my dad, who's 54. Life in my family was anything but ordinary due to an intense focus on sports and athletic achievements. My siblings, Michael, the 31-year-old, Sarah, who's now 28, and my twin brother Casey, also 25, were like shining stars in the family, especially when it came to sports. Each one of them was a dedicated athlete, and our home practically hummed with the spirit of competition and athletic prowess. Michael was the quintessential soccer player, swift on his feet and always a winner. Sarah swung her softball bat with precision and power, making waves on her team. My twin brother Casey stood out as the star running back for the football team. Dad had his glory days playing basketball for a Division II school, and Mom was a powerhouse on the volleyball court. Sports were more than just a pastime for them, it was a way of life. On the other hand, I was the odd one out. I just couldn't see myself dedicating my life to the rough and tumble of these sports. Archery was where I found my passion. There was something soothing about the focus and precision required in drawing a bow, aiming, then witnessing the arrow soar and hit the target. To me, it was exhilarating, but to my family, it was merely a wimpy sport, not worthy of their serious attention. From an early age, I felt like the black sheep among them. It wasn't just their indifference, it was as though the family had unwittingly constructed an invisible wall that seemed to place me on the outside looking in. My interests seemed trivial to them compared to the embraces, cheers, and full attendance they lavished at Michael's matches, Sarah's games, and Casey's competitions. I struggled against this tide, but it often felt futile. My parents were always deeply invested in my siblings' sports affairs. I can't recall an instance where they missed an event. However, when it came to my endeavors, their interest was painfully lacking. Attending my archery tournaments was not something they prioritized, and that hurt. Growing up, I took part in around 20 archery tournaments from age 14 to 16, each one carrying its share of excitement and nerves for me. Yet, they only managed to show up for a single tournament out of those 20. It felt like a glaring spotlight was perpetually on my siblings, leaving me in the dim shadows. A significant portion of my teenage years was spent grappling with feelings of emotional neglect. Whenever I mustered the courage to address my concerns with my parents, to tell them how much I yearned for their interest and support, it fell on deaf ears. They shrugged it off as mere attention-seeking behavior. Those conversations, or rather, lack of them, planted seeds of resentment in me. I was never deprived of the basic necessities: food, shelter, education, but the emotional void was palpable. I remember countless nights lying awake, wrestling with questions about why I was different, why I did not seem to fit into their mold. To them, the idea of success was wrapped tightly in a cloak of athletic achievement, something I never wore. Every arrow I released in a tournament wasn't just a competition for me, it was also an unspoken plea for their acknowledgement, a wish that they could see value in my passion. Their absence, time and again, taught me one heart-wrenching lesson. My achievements mattered less if they didn't come with a victory on a field or court. Even the rare occasions that they attended felt transactional, perhaps an act to tick off obligations rather than offering genuine encouragement. I think what stung them most wasn't what they did, supporting my siblings so fervently, but what they did not do. Their absence left me longing for validation I never truly received. I was seldom without the knowledge that I was loved, but the kind of love they offered seemed conditional. Conditional, most notably, on sharing the family's love for athleticism, on wanting to hit home runs rather than bullseyes. Deep down, I wanted them to be proud of me, to accept me for who I was, regardless of what activity caught my interest. The persistent inadequacy I felt turned the notion of family into something bittersweet. While they cheered for points, goals, and touchdowns, I was alone in my triumphs, only able to savor personal victories when I had to carry them by myself. It was a lonely road, one that made me feel less like a member of the family and more like an outsider trying to belong. But little did I know that was only the beginning of challenges I would face with them. Little did I know how much that black sheep feeling would grow, transforming and eventually redefining my relationship with them entirely. When I was 15, I began dating Amy, a classmate who seemed to shine in all the ways I felt dim. She was warm, friendly, and to my delight, took an interest in my unique passions. For once, I found someone who seemed to see me for who I truly was, someone who looked past the stereotypical interests my family had. Over the months, Amy became an important part of my life. I was deeply invested in her, envisioning a future where we stayed close even beyond the labels high school had attached to us. I suppose I naively thought that despite our young age, the connection we shared was genuine and durable. Approximately 6 or 7 months into our relationship, I decided the time had come to introduce Amy to my family. It felt like a significant step, one that might bridge some of the gaps between me and my parents. Surprisingly, they warmed to her quickly. Amy seemed to have a way of charming those she met, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope that perhaps she would somehow translate my worthiness into a language my family understood. Yet, almost 2 years after our first meeting, things began to unravel in ways I had never anticipated. It happened casually, as these revelations often do, over nothing more dramatic than a casual chat with one of Amy's former friends. She let it slip in passing conversation. The words played back in my mind repeatedly as I tried to make sense of them. Amy had been unfaithful to me, deceiving me for months. Initially, I refused to believe it. I was pained and confused, grappling with feelings of betrayal that ran deeper than perhaps any pain I'd felt before. Yet, amidst my turmoil, a part of me knew I couldn't ignore what had been said. So, trembling with apprehension, I confronted Amy about it. Her confession shattered the remnants of hope I had held onto. I learned that it wasn't just any classmate or acquaintance she was seeing. It was my own twin brother, Casey. Her words cut deep as she explained her feelings. She told me that while her initial affection for me had been authentic, she had fallen for Casey in a way that supposedly surpassed what we had. To hear that from someone I cared about was like reopening every old wound of inadequacy, yet this time alongside a new layer of pain that was fresh and raw. That evening, with emotions roiling inside of me, I went home. The anger and hurt flowed through me almost like a burning river. I wanted nothing more than to understand how everything had gone so wrong, how my own brother could engage in such deceit. And so I confronted Casey, lost in a haze of emotions too intense to control. Perhaps it was the built-up bitterness of feeling inadequate, the betrayal of Amy's actions, or the gutting knowledge that my family had never truly stood in my corner. In a moment of blind rage, I lashed out, delivering a punch that displaced months, no years, of underlying hurt. I struck Casey with a force I hadn't fully realized I possessed, driven purely by the impulses of a broken heart. The punch landed and Casey fell, knocked out cold. In that instant, as he lay there, the severity of my actions crashed into my consciousness, overshadowing any satisfaction my fury could offer. I realized then that I had crossed a line, one driven by emotions too powerful to wrestle into submission. What had begun as a confrontation to seek closure had spiraled into chaos, an explosion directed not only at Casey, but one that unleashed years of compounded grievances towards my family. Reflecting on that night, I understand now it was the culmination of years spent swimming against the tide of my family's expectations. My actions, and their consequences, served as the axis around which an entire segment of my life pivoted. And though dealing with the aftermath was daunting, the whirlwind of that night triggered a chain of events that ultimately forced me to confront where my allegiances truly lay, for better or for worse. In the aftermath of that volatile night, reality settled in with the weight of an unforeseen reckoning. My parents were furious, and understandably so. In our household, violence wasn't just frowned upon, it was unthinkable. But when emotions run high, decisions follow that sometimes defy taught values and moral standings. Such was my predicament, facing the brunt of decisions that I let emotions fuel. The notion of facing legal consequences was terrifying. My parents, caught between their anger at my actions and the shock of betrayal by Casey, decided that pressing charges might be a step too far. Whether it was out of sheer familial protectionism or a realization of the fractures within our family, I found myself with an unexpected reprieve. Rather than navigating the complexities of legal repercussions, we reached a different kind of settlement, one that would sever me from them indefinitely, or so it seemed. My parents, seeking perhaps a means to restore some symmetry in the immediate chaos that had engulfed our lives, made an arrangement. I was sent away to live with my aunt, a decision positioned as an ultimatum. My aunt, someone whose absence from family gatherings had always been a question left unanswered, welcomed me without hesitation. She had been estranged for reasons never fully disclosed to me, but her familial love was genuine, a contrast to the strained logic that had underscored my life until then. For 2 hours, the drive to her city was shrouded in silence, a silence befitting the overwhelming emotions bubbling beneath the surface. Arriving at her quaint house, tucked away like a sanctuary in the comforting arms of her town, I was greeted by something I wasn't accustomed to, a warm embrace. A chance at a fresh start awaited me behind her doors. I made the necessary transfer to a new high school, feeling both the dread of starting over and the relief of escaping a past that felt like a shackle. Bit by bit, I embraced a new normal with the encouragement of my aunt and uncle. I began to understand the values of support, kindness, and a house filled with the promise of acceptance. Focusing on academics, which had always been my strong suit, I directed my energies into creating a future I could control. After high school, I pursued a degree in electrical engineering, carving out a path entirely my own, free from the overarching shadows of the expectations that once dictated everything I did. It was during my university years that I met my wife, a fellow student traversing through the experiences of academic life like I was. Our connection was immediate, a bond formed beyond surface-level interests, but in shared values and complementary dreams. Our partnership blossomed into marriage, in a ceremony rooted in simplicity, surrounded by those we both cherished. For all the joy of new beginnings, I did think about inviting my family. Nostalgia for what could have been intertwined with my decision-making, but ultimately, I concluded that my new life didn't need to borrow drama from an unresolved past. I stepped forward with my wife, determined to plant our flags in a land free of discord. Despite the dim echoes of family ties stretching back into my memories, my aunt and uncle became the linchpins of kinship I had never before fully realized. With their unwavering support and the foundation they provided, my life flourished in ways that still humble me today. I had found my definition of family, and in their presence, I'd thrived. Just before welcoming our daughter a year ago, my aunt's reassurance became a grounding force, guiding us through the waves of parenthood. A daughter who represented more than continuation, she was the embodiment of optimism for the future. A future I held close, built on decisions born of experience. Though my journey to this point isn't without scars, each step marks a chapter where understanding replaced regret, and self-discovery emerged as both the answer and the journey itself. About a week ago, I received a Facebook message from my mother and father, an unexpected reach into the life I thought I left behind. Their proposal sparkled with seasonal cheer, a cordial invitation to reconnect over Christmas at their house. It was as if years had fallen away with the click of a message, layers of disconnect and old wounds glossed over by the simplicity of an electronic signal. I was torn, my initial instinct to protect the peace I had nurtured over time clashing with a distant yearning for closure. Their words were diplomatic, a careful dance of reconciliation that left more unsaid than said. "We'd love to see you over the holidays," it read, a sentence that managed to tug at heartstrings I thought long severed. I told them truthfully that I would consider it, suggesting I might already have other plans. A clear answer was promised soon, yet even as I typed those words, the decision felt monumental, far larger than any holiday gathering. Shortly after, friend requests from Michael and Sarah pinged through my notifications. Each felt like a strange echo from the past, a tentative hand reaching across the abyss of time. It was weirdly unsettling, like unearthing a treasure you had buried long ago, nostalgic yet shadowed by the reasons you hid it in the first place. My mind spun with questions of their intentions. Was this a genuine olive branch, an acknowledgement of past mistakes, or merely an effort to smooth over familial tensions, like cracks hidden under paint? In the midst of sorting through these thoughts, my wife stepped forward as the voice of reason. Her perspective remained firmly grounded, gently reminding me that whatever decision I made should align with the present reality, not the ephemeral whims of nostalgia. Considering her viewpoint, I understood that if I did choose to accept the invitation, she and our daughter would stay at her father-in-law's house. Her words were wise. Pregnant with our second child, she certainly didn't need the emotional turmoil of family drama entering her life again. She squeezed my hand, an anchor against the emotional tides threatening to overtake my reason. I agreed with her, knowing that the family I was choosing to build deserved peace, stability, and the absence of the stress I had grown up with. What confounds me is the intention behind my original family's sudden outreach. Do they truly want to mend the past, or is there an ulterior motive, a need to validate something on their end involving Casey? I do not want to step into a situation where I am coerced into apologizing or setting aside the unresolved resentment that still occasionally flickers to life inside me. Caught within this emotional tempest, I stand at a crossroads. The allure of potential reconciliation beckons, yet the specter of past pain looms large. The decision weighs heavily as I toggle between growth and remembrance, seeking advice from the ether, hoping for clarity amidst the conflicting messages from a now distant family. Others' judgments and opinions buzz in my head like a dissonant symphony. Some friends express support for reconciling, arguing that holding grudges only anchors us to past pains and inhibits personal growth. They suggest that extending the olive branch might pave a path to closure, allowing me to lay old ghosts to rest and usher in a new chapter of healing. On the flip side, voices caution me with cautionary tales of old assumptions. Even if the intention is genuine, reopening old wounds could resurface unresolved tensions, derailing the sense of progress and peace I've built over the years. Letting them back into my life, even briefly, without scrutinous consideration, could jeopardize the family harmony I've nurtured by choosing to forge my own path. My mind oscillates between longing and logic, the precarious balance of past affection against the sharp edges of bitter memories. This isn't a light decision, as it'll ripple through the current calm of my household. My twin brothers and parents' sudden overtures feel incomplete, as if there's an unsaid understanding amiss. Considering the weight of potential outcomes, I turn inward, navigating my own emotional landscape for a guiding star. Do I owe this confrontation more to myself than to them? A chance to express the hurt they've caused, face to face, perhaps even squeezing an apology from history's clenched fist? Or do I choose to look forward, focusing on my own family's future, free from cycles of hurt and recognition? And so, I plead not just for advice, but for insight reflecting facets of human experience beyond my own perceptions. Will this meeting, if undertaken, lead to forgiveness, or just open a Pandora's box of unresolved family dynamics? With my heart in one hand and rationality in the other, I seek wisdom for the path ahead.